Welcome to this edition of Ethical Sustainable Investment News and Analysis to Profit By. I'm Ron Robbins, an ethical investing pioneer for over 40 years, quoted in the Wall Street Journal, MarketWatch, the Globe and Mail, and numerous other media, and founder of the highly respected global ethical sustainable investing information website, Investing for the Soul. And please listen to my disclaimer statement at the end of this podcast. Now enjoy this podcast. Hello, Ron Robbins here. First of all, I want to wish my fellow Canadians a very happy Canada Day and my American friends a great Independence Day. So welcome to my podcast episode 86, published on July 1st, 2022, titled ESG Picks, Great Corporate Citizens, and presented by Investing for the Soul. Investingforthesoul.com is your site for vital global ethical and sustainable investing mentoring, news, commentary, information, and resources. Remember that you can find a full transcript and links to content, including stock symbols, quotes, and bonus material at this episode's podcast page located at investingforthesoul.com/podcasts. Now, if any terms are unfamiliar to you, simply Google them. Also, just a reminder, I do not evaluate any of the stocks or funds mentioned in these podcasts, nor do I receive any compensation from anyone covered in these podcasts. Furthermore, I will reveal to you any personal investments I have in the investments mentioned herein. Now, my first article has this title: ESG Investing, 7 Profitable Stock Picks for the Socially Responsible, by Tezcan Jegil on investorplace.com. Here are Ms. Jegil's stock picks and brief comments that generally relate to the latest material developments of the company concerned. 1. Best Buy. A newly launched home pickup recycling program will make it easier for customers to recycle old electronics. 2. Deere announced a new joint venture that will improve productivity, growing more food using fewer resources. 3. iShares ESG Aware MSCI EAFE ETF tracks the best ESG stocks. 4. Microsoft. A new data center in Finland will provide carbonless surplus heating to the surrounding region. 5. Novo Nordisk. Positive results for a once-weekly insulin treatment will improve the quality of life for diabetes patients. 6. Procter & Gamble. Developed a 3-in-1 product to clean, sanitize, and defend against 99.9% of bacteria and viruses for up to 24 hours. 7. Xylem developed a new wastewater treatment solution that will help improve nutrient removal, save energy, and reduce costs. To help investors choose ESG shares, MSCI, a leading supplier of investment decision tools, provides the MSCI ESG rating. End quotes. This annual ranking, though they're Canadian companies, could be of interest to ethical and sustainable investors everywhere. The following descriptive article is titled Canada's Best 50 Corporate Citizens of 2022 Continue to Conquer the Markets. It's by the renowned Corporate Knights Group and found on their website, with this commentary by Toby Heaps. Here are some quotes from Mr. Heaps. 20 years ago, Corporate Knights launched its quest for a more humane form of capitalism, placing people and planet ahead of profits, with the best 50 corporate citizens sitting at the head of the round table to make business a force for good. A lot has changed for the better in that time, and a lot hasn't. Thankfully, the glass ceilings in Canada's corporate boardrooms have been breached, with non-male members now making up almost a third of directors, double their 1/6 share in 2022. Racial diversity on large corporate boards has also improved. 9% of members are now non-white, double the 4% level in 2011, when we first started tracking this metric. While one workplace fatality is too many, it is encouraging that on a national level, a third less people died on the job in 2019 than was the case in 2002. Over the last 2 decades, corporate profits have doubled, workers have been left behind and emissions have stalled. But the best 50 firms are leading the way with 50% more gender diversity and triple the investments aligned with the clean economy. The best corporate citizen stock market performance has outperformed its peers, earning 499% gross return since it was first launched in June 2002 versus 366% for the S&P TSX Composite." End quotes. Incidentally, the top 3 companies in the ranking are Hydro-Quebec, Innergex Renewable Energy Inc., and Brookfield Renewable Partners LP. Go to this podcast webpage for a great statistical table titled "The 2022 Best 50 Corporate Citizens versus the Rest." End of quotes there. It seems in every podcast I have an article and recommendation from Matthew DeLallo from Fool.com. His latest article is titled "This Renewable Energy Giant Sees Even More Powerful Growth Ahead." Here are quotes from Mr. DeLallo's article. NextEra Energy is already growing faster than most utilities, powered by its focus on clean energy. That high-powered growth could enable NextEra Energy to continue generating market-crushing total returns for investors. The company raised its 2022 and 2023 earnings ranges by 5 cents per share, while boosting 2024's forecast by 10 cents per share. Meanwhile, it sees 2025 earnings growing by 6 to 8% off 2024's higher base. This updated forecast would see the company expand its adjusted earnings per share at a 9.8% annual rate from 2021 to the high end of 2025's forecast range. Several factors are helping power that growth. The company plans to significantly increase its core wind, solar, and storage business, expand beyond the power sector, and grow its already large-scale transmission business to help support the decarbonization of the U.S. economy. In addition, the company expects to build a leading regulated water business. NextEra Energy also unveiled its Real Zero plan to eliminate all the carbon emissions across its businesses no later than 2045, and without the help of carbon offset credits. NextEra Energy has proven that going green can generate some serious green for its investors. That makes it a great stock to buy and hold for the long haul because it can potentially deliver massive returns as it leads the way in decarbonizing the U.S. economy." End quotes. Now, income from investments is particularly important for those who need cash flow in their daily living. So this next article will interest those investors. It's titled "Looking for Passive Income?" This renewable energy company is a great way to go. It's by Rekha Khandelwal, also on Fool.com. Here's some of what Ms. Khandelwal writes. At current share prices, Atlantica Sustainable Infrastructure offers a dividend yield of 5.6%. Utilities focused on renewable energy offer a great way to generate regular dividend income. Atlantica Sustainable Infrastructure owns over 2 gigawatts of renewable electricity generation assets, roughly 72% of which are solar. Renewable power generation is expected to contribute around 70% of the company's cash available for distribution from 2022 to 2026. Atlantica also generates power using natural gas. The company expects its efficient natural gas and heat segment to contribute 15% of its cash available for distribution from 2022 to 2026. Transmission lines are expected to contribute 12%, and its water desalination assets are expected to contribute 3%. The biggest positives for Atlantica Sustainable Infrastructure as an investment are its stable and predictable long-term cash flows. At the end of 2021, the weighted average remaining term of agreements for the company's assets was 15 years. All of its revenue comes from contracted or regulated assets. Its assets are also geographically diversified, with 46% of its cash available for distribution coming from North America, 31% from Europe, and 15% from South America. And there's some protection from inflation. Rising interest rates are impacting the stock prices of companies in capital-intensive businesses, but the interest rates on 93% of Atlantica Sustainable Infrastructure's project debt are either fixed or hedged. Similarly, the company has escalation factors included in its contracts to protect it from inflation. Management is targeting cash available for distribution per share growth of 5 to 8% through 2025. In short, Atlantica Sustainable Infrastructure is a top renewables stock that can generate passive income for shareholders in the decades to come. End quotes. This next article is by Joel Makoa of greenbiz.com, a well-known and highly respected figure in sustainable business. It's not a direct stock recommendation, but rather is here as a stock that some of you might want to look at. The title of the article is, In Brazil, Suzano Harvests Trees with Deep Roots in Communities. Here's some of what Mr. Makoa writes. What if the company had planted those trees years earlier on degraded land that's now been revitalized? And if it then planted millions more trees where the cut ones used to be, or to be harvested years later and replaced by yet more trees? And it did this for multiple generations in partnership with local and indigenous communities. Can that company be deemed sustainable? These are among the questions I pondered last week during my visit to Sao Paulo, Brazil. I was there as the guest of Suzano, a 98-year-old pulp and paper company, the largest in Latin America and one of the 10 largest in the world, to help host its annual ESG Call, an online event during which the company showcased its achievements and challenges to a global audience of investors, customers, activists, and others. In quotes, he says, I was paid for this work, but not for this article. Close quotes. Susanna, founded in 1924 by Ukrainian immigrant Leon Pfeffer, pioneered the production of pulp and paper from eucalyptus as an alternative to pine. It invested in research and development. In the 1980s, for example, it began to apply biotechnology, adopting micropropagation practices in its plantations and in sustainability measures, including the creation in 1999 of the non-profit Ecofuturo Institute, with a focus on socio-environmental responsibility. I was impressed by the environmental aspects of Susanna's operations, which have been informed by such global sustainability thinkers as John Elkington, Pavan Sukadev, and the late Tom Lovejoy. The company has a long-standing rural development program in which it teaches communities how to make the best use of their land by producing high-value crops and helping them transform those crops into finished goods that go into local and global markets. For example, it supports honey producers and beekeepers in placing their hives inside Susanna's eucalyptus plantations, which has the added benefit of reducing poaching by people afraid of bee stings. Among other things, there is a history of distrust to overcome. A few years ago, for example, activists in the northern state of Maranhão claimed Susanna had behaved badly, stealing land from traditional communities, displacing families, and making livelihoods untenable. Susanna disputes these claims. Walter Schalke, the CEO, struck me as earnest as any business leader about the company's social and environmental commitments. Not everything that we are doing is perfect, he said, but we are humble enough to bring the problems to the table and try to address how we are going to build the action plan to the future. End quotes. Now some other honourable mentions, not in any order. Links on this podcast page. 1. Title: Introducing the 3 largest ESG ETFs, found on trackinsight.com by Eddie Barak. 2. Title: 2 top dividend stocks you can buy and hold forever on Fool.com by Beth McKenna. 3. Title: Top 7 socially responsible funds on GoogleWebStory.com by Technica Raman. 4. Title: 3 Sharia-compliant growth companies on MoneyWeek.com by Scott Climo. Plus an article for Australian investors, again link on this podcast webpage, title: 3 dividend-paying and ethical ASX shares to buy now, fund manager on monexsecurities.com.au by Tony Yu. Well, these are my top news stories with their stock and fund tips for this podcast, ESG Picks, Greek Corporate Citizens. To get all the links and stock symbols, or to read the transcript of this podcast and more, go to investingforthesoul.com/podcasts and scroll down to this episode. Also, be sure to click the like and subscribe buttons in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you download or listen to this podcast. And please click the share buttons to share this podcast with your friends and family. Let's promote ethical and sustainable investing as a force for hope in these deeply troubled times. Contact me if you have any questions. Thank you for listening. Talk to you next on July 15th. Bye for now. Learn how to create a simple portfolio reflecting your personal values by taking my 1-hour tutorial. Go to investingforthesoul.com/podcasts and click the link in the right-hand column for my DIY Ethical Sustainable Investing Pays tutorial. Now, I'll mention in the podcast if I have any direct interest or holdings in companies or securities I'm talking about. Furthermore, any news, opinions, analysis, or other information offered by myself, as well as references and information to or from other external sources in this podcast, is provided as general market information and should not be relied upon and thus does not constitute investment advice. Investors should consult their own licensed investment professional before making investments. Also, I will not accept liability for any loss or damage, including without limitation any loss of profit, which may arise directly or indirectly from use of or reliance on information in this podcast. Do contact me at ronr@investingforthesoul.com. Signing off, this is Ron Robbins.